What's up, guys? Mason the Brock Henderson here, and this is Luke Cage, Season 1, Episode 1, The Moment of Truth. And I've been so excited for the show to come out because so far all of Marvel's Netflix series have been really good. Daredevil was amazing. Jessica Jones, maybe not everybody would like it, but personally I thought it was a very well done show. Just not as action packed as Daredevil was. Luke Cage, though, looks like it could be kind of that mixture of he's a guy who's bulletproof and has super strength. So you feel like, yeah, there's probably going to be some superheroing going on, similar to Daredevil. Maybe not as like flipping and ninja-like as Daredevil, but just brute force. I'm gonna wreck everybody in my way type of superhero. But then you've also got what feels like a very dark character, kind of like Jessica Jones. She had her own super strength, she had her own superpowers, and part of that was, yeah, she's facing a guy who can control people with the sound of his voice. So, yeah, there was a lot of superheroing going on there, but at the same time, a lot of the focus was on Jessica Jones trying to stop him through any means besides her superheroing. It was very hard to stop him just by using super strength. She didn't really have a ton of people to throw around. There wasn't a lot of, oh, I need to fight this henchman, I need to fight this henchman. A lot of it was just trying to stop him, trying to raise awareness about Kilgrave, trying to make people realize there's this guy out here that's doing this, and also trying to prove the people innocent that he's controlled before. So, not really much of a superhero show as compared to Daredevil. Luke Cage has that sense of he's trying to stop this guy through maybe other means besides superheroing, but I feel like he is going to be doing some superheroing because mainly this guy has henchmen, and that's kind of the interesting thing about it, is that even though this feels a bit less like save all of New York as stopping Kingpin did, this is more like the guy wants to sort of control Harlem through political means, whereas Kingpin, it felt like he was just trying to take control of the gangs and do it through a criminal way. This guy feels a lot more political. Cottonmouth, Mr. Stokes, whatever you want to call him, he feels a lot more political. It feels like it's going to be a bit harder for Luke Cage to do anything about it. He can fight the henchmen, but it's really hard to get to him directly if he's got the protection of a politician on him. So that'll be interesting to see how they're going to do that. But overall, I mean, it's a good start to the show. A little bit exposition filled, but I feel like most of the time, whenever you have a show like this where you're having to introduce the main character, talk about how he got these abilities, talk about what happened to him in the past, all this stuff, there is going to be some exposition involved. And I'm not going to say that Daredevil and Jessica Jones never had any exposition, because they did. But I guess because there are some scenes that feel a bit slower in this, it feels like they're really building up, which that's kind of what Marvel likes to do with these Netflix series. They like to start off the first few episodes building up the story, and then after 4 or 5, that's when it really gets going. That's when the story just starts flowing. You just really get engrossed into it. So I don't mind it being a bit exposition heavy, but there are some scenes that I feel may have dragged on a little bit long. Just a couple scenes to talk about. You got the one between Luke and the cop woman. I can't remember her name right now, but he takes her back to his apartment, and it feels like it drags on for about 30 seconds too long. And 30 seconds in a matter of 50 minutes doesn't seem a whole lot. But whenever you have that episode or that scene, plus you got another 30-second scene where the guy's playing piano for much longer than it feels like, you got another 30-second scene where it's showing the guy singing at the club for 30 more seconds than it feels like it needs. You got these little 30-second longer scenes than they need to be, and it just starts to pile up into where you got like 5 or 6 minutes that just don't really feel needed unless you're just trying to use up the time. Now, that can be a good thing, but at the same time I feel like if you just put out a shorter episode, that would be fine too. Because later on in the show, I'm sure there are going to be moments that drag on for a couple minutes, but they're good couple minutes. It's emotion building. It's all that stuff. These drag on and feel like it's just we need time filler. So let's show this guy singing for 30 extra seconds. Let's show them about to have sex for 30 extra seconds. Let's show him playing the piano for 30 extra seconds. It's not really a complaint, but at the same time, it's something that needs to be focused on less. You know, these little scenes that just start to add up after a while. But as for the story itself, it's got a good setup for this season. You know, you've got Luke Cage taking on this guy. It looks like there's going to be a lot of protecting going to be involved in this. A little bit less he's going to stop this guy at the beginning. More like he's just trying to protect these people that this guy is affecting. And they did a good job of introducing some of the major players. Obviously, you've got Luke. You've got the guy that owns a barbershop, who I think is probably going to be kind of a father figure to him. You've got the main bad guy in Cottonmouth. You've got the politician that's helping him. You've got the leader of the gang that Cottonmouth is working with. You've got the lady cop that's going to be Luke Cage's romantic love interest in all of this. You got her partner involved. You got the kids that pulled off the robbery of Cottonmouth's operation. One of them gets killed by Shamik, and then Shamik gets brought in, and Cottonmouth just beats the living hell out of him. That scene was great. I'll talk about that more in a second. But you've got all of these major characters being brought in, and Chico seems like he's going to be kind of the main. Like if you saw Jessica Jones, the girl that killed her parents in the first episode, that was kind of the main. Jessica Jones was going to help her character. Chico feels like he's going to be the main. Luke Cage is going to help him character. Now in Jessica Jones, spoiler alert, that didn't work out very well because she ended up dying anyway. So whether or not he's able to actually protect this kid will be an interesting story to follow, because things could go wrong. He might not be able to protect him. But I like how the protection aspect is kind of what drives him forward. He's kind of. It feels like he doesn't want to do anything with his abilities. He wants to be kind of on the down low. Something happened in prison. We'll probably get more of that later, and that may have something to do with why he doesn't want anybody to know about him. But he has these abilities and never uses them because he's scared, I guess, of what will happen. And you can really tell that, and yet there's this scene at the end where he goes to talk to the lady about paying his rent, and they're being harassed by some of the politician ladies, I guess goons, trying to get more money out of him. And he can't help it. He's got to help them. I think he felt the same way with Chico. He felt like he just has to help him because, his father figure, the barbershop guy, cares for Chico as a son too. And so I really feel like that's going to be what drives him forward, gets him kind of out of the shadows and actually starts helping people. And the big question in all of this, I think, is where is this in the timeline? Because it feels like this happens well before what happened in Jessica Jones. So I'm wondering if this is sort of going to lead into that, or if they're going to interconnect it all, or if it's going to flash forward to when he was with Jessica Jones and now. I don't know how they're going to do it. It's going to be interesting to see, but it's got a good setup. The scenes that are really the ones to talk about are, first of all, you've got kind of the opening scene in the barbershop, which sort of sets the mood. It's very personal, it's very close. They're just having conversations about basketball, about coaches and players and all this stuff. It just feels very family-like in that first scene. And it kind of set the mood for a majority of it. It felt very down to earth, whereas some of these, Daredevil, a lot of the conversation they had felt, some of them when it was just the three, when you had Matthew, Foggy, and Karen, it felt very personal. But then whenever they started doing the Daredevil stuff, it felt like, oh, we gotta save the world, we gotta save New York. It got very big and intense. With Jessica Jones, it felt very dark and grim. It didn't feel at all like a family type thing. This opening scene, and a majority of it, except for some of the action scenes, felt very family-like. It felt just like a normal conversation people would have about everyday stuff. Whenever they're talking about the club stuff, yeah, that sounds like a normal conversation. Even if it's talking about something a bit shady, it feels like a normal conversation that people would have, and it feels very normal, and I really like that. I like the feel that they've got going on. Second scene to talk about is the shoot off whenever Chico and Dante and Shamik are all robbing the money from the Cottonmouth people. It was kind of that kind of set the tone as far as the action goes, because first of all, they brought back kind of that really realistic action stuff. And you've got body parts, blood just spewing everywhere. And I feel like they're kind of setting that up for the rest of this season. Like even the final scene, which I'll talk about too. It just feels like they like that aspect, and Daredevil had some of that too. Maybe not as intense as this. Of course, I don't really remember the first season that well, but from the second season, they didn't have a whole lot of scenes like that where guy gets shot with a shotgun and there's a hole now in his stomach where he got shot. It's like, okay, like that kind of sets the mood for how the action scenes are going to be. And it was a good little shootout. It was some nice action there. The next scene is whenever Shamik is brought in by Cottonmouth, and I mean that scene, it set up the intimidation factor of Cottonmouth, because first of all, some of the words that he chose in that scene were brilliant. He smacks the crap out of him. He's like, "I slapped you like a bitch. I don't hit a woman with anything but an open palm." And I'm just like, dang, like that's a good line to use if you're a bad guy. I'm gonna use that later if I ever intend to torture somebody. But like he says that, and then he's asking where Chico is, and he like spits blood out. And he's just like, "Good answer. Now I get to hit you like a man," and then starts just wailing on him until you hear bones start cracking, and he like looks up, and just covered in blood. He's got this crazy look in his eyes. It really, it was kind of like the Kingpin scene where he smashed the guy's head into the door. Not that good, but it's still kind of set up like, yeah, this guy is a little bit on the psychopath edge. He seems like he's calm, cool, and collected, but whenever things start going wrong, this is what happens to him. Whereas Kingpin, it felt like he always had that edge of he can go crazy at any time. This guy, for a majority of the episode, until that scene, I'm thinking, oh yeah, this guy's just going to be the calm, the suave guy who's just like, I got this all under control. And then all of a sudden something goes wrong. He's got the culprit right in front of him. Bam! Bam! Just taking him out. It was really interesting to see how quickly his demeanor could change. But the other thing that kind of raises a question in my mind is the guy with the shades. Call them shades. Haha. First of all, there's a history between him and Luke Cage. Something that happened in prison, I guess. But I don't know. I'm kind of wondering what he has to do with all this, because there's a moment where he takes off his sunglasses and says, "I'm gonna look you in the eyes, and you're gonna tell me, is this an inside job?" I'm wondering if he has powers too. Like, I'll be interested to see if we find that out later. Like, he ends up having powers after all of this, because it kind of feels like it's sort of a throwaway thing. Like, oh, he takes off his glasses at certain points. I'm wondering if maybe he has the ability to like get into somebody's mind through their eyes type thing, like control them or read their thoughts or something along those lines. I want to know what his deal is. I want to know more about him, because he's kind of a mysterious figure right now in the midst of all this. And then the final scene to talk about is, of course, Luke Cage's first real action scene. Great way to start off. The guy throws a punch into his face, and you just see his whole hand like, and then the bone pops out. It's like, ow, that sucks. And then the guy comes at him with a bat, breaks the bat, he's down, and the guy points a gun, he grabs the gun, shoots it into his hand, and then just like takes it away, opens up his hand, there's a burn mark, and then the bullet. And I'm just like, that bullet should be squished, but I don't care, that was still a badass scene. I'll let it go. But great little action scene for Luke Cage, kind of sets the tone for his action scenes as well. Be interesting to see how many different clever ways they can, oh, this guy is completely indestructible. How can we play around with this? Like you obviously can shoot him a ton of times, have his clothes full of bullet holes, and he's just like, whatever. You can have somebody come at him with like a chainsaw and then try to chainsaw him, and then like the chainsaw just breaks, like the little the chain on the saw just like pops off and goes everywhere. There's so many clever things you can do when you have an indestructible hero like this. I'm curious to see what all they're going to do with it, because it feels like they've got a good sense of what they can do with his abilities. So I love what they've got going on. I love the setup. The characters so far are really good. The story, although a bit exposition heavy right now, I feel like will get better. You know, every single time I watch one of these Netflix shows, I'm thinking, okay, this is dragging on a little bit. It's a little bit slow, but once we hit the third or fourth episode, things are going to start to go. And you know, they have enough action in this first episode to get me interested in seeing more of it. You know, like it's good action. I want to see more. So great setup, great opening to the first season. Can't wait to see more. Really excited. So those are my thoughts on this episode. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Leave a like and subscribe for future Luke Cage reviews, and I'll see you at the next one. Peace out.